The power of one peaceful soul. History often celebrates conquerors, kings, and military commanders, individuals who changed the course of nations through armies, wealth, or political power. Yet every so often, a person emerges who transforms the world using none of these tools. Instead of weapons, they carry truth. Instead of fear, they inspire hope. Instead of violence, they choose peace. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, known to the world as Mahatma Gandhi, was one such person. Few individuals have influenced humanity as profoundly as Gandhi. He proved that courage is not measured by physical strength, that leadership is not defined by authority, and that lasting change does not require violence. Through unwavering faith in truth, justice, and nonviolent resistance, he led millions of people in one of the most remarkable freedom movements in history. His life became living proof that one determined individual, guided by conviction rather than hatred, can challenge even the mightiest empire. This book is not simply the story of a political leader or the history of India's struggle for independence. It is the story of a man who transformed both himself and the world around him. Gandhi's journey was not one of instant greatness. He was once a shy young lawyer who struggled to speak confidently in public. He experienced failure, uncertainty, rejection, and self-doubt. Yet, through discipline, reflection, and an unwavering commitment to his principles, he evolved into one of the most respected and influential figures of the 20th century. Born on October 2nd, 1869, in Porbandar, a small coastal town in western India, Gandhi grew up in a family that valued honesty, spirituality, and public service. These early influences shaped his character, but it was his experiences abroad, particularly in South Africa, that awakened his determination to confront injustice. There, he witnessed racial discrimination firsthand, including the now famous incident in which he was thrown off a train despite holding a valid first-class ticket. Satyagraha was more than a political strategy. It was a moral philosophy rooted in the belief that truth and love are ultimately stronger than violence and oppression. Gandhi believed that real victory was not achieved by destroying one's enemy, but by transforming hearts through courage, patience, and compassion. When Gandhi returned to India in 1915, he found a nation longing for freedom but divided by poverty, inequality, religious tension, and colonial rule. Rather than relying on armed rebellion, he united millions through peaceful protests, civil disobedience, economic self-reliance. His influence extended far beyond India's borders. Leaders such as Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, Cesar Chavez, and many others drew inspiration from Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolent resistance. His ideas continue to shape movements for civil rights, social justice, environmental responsibility, and peaceful conflict resolution around the world. Yet Gandhi was not without flaws. He was a human being who constantly questioned himself, experimented with his beliefs, and evolved throughout his life. Some of his decisions and views remain subjects of debate among historians and scholars. Understanding Gandhi requires acknowledging both his remarkable achievements and the complex. This book aims to present Gandhi as more than a historical figure. It seeks to explore the values that defined his life and examine why his ideas remain relevant in today's world. In an age marked by political polarization, social division, economic inequality, and global conflict, Gandhi's message carries renewed significance. His belief that lasting change begins with personal responsibility challenges each of us to consider how we respond to injustice, disagreement, and adversity in our own lives. Throughout these chapters, you will discover the key. As you read this book, look beyond the historical events and political milestones. Look instead at the timeless wisdom hidden within Gandhi's life. Consider how courage can exist without aggression, how conviction can coexist with compassion, and how humility can become a source of extraordinary strength. The story you're about to read is more than the biography of one remarkable man. It is the story of an idea, that truth is stronger than lies, that love is stronger than hatred, and that peace is stronger than violence. It is the story of a leader who changed the course of history not by conquering nations, but by awakening the conscience of humanity. Whether you're interested in history, leadership, personal growth, or the pursuit of justice, Gandhi's life offers lessons that remain as powerful today as they were during his lifetime. His journey reminds us that greatness is not reserved for the powerful or the privileged. It belongs to those who choose integrity over convenience, courage over fear, and compassion over hatred. Welcome to the inspiring life and enduring legacy of Mahatma Gandhi, a man whose greatest weapon was peace, whose greatest strength was truth, and whose greatest victory was proving that one person can indeed change the world. Chapter 1. The Early Life of Mohandas Gandhi. Every remarkable journey begins with humble beginnings. Long before Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi became known throughout the world as Mahatma Gandhi, the great soul, he was simply a quiet and curious boy growing up in a small coastal town in western India. Nothing in his early appearance suggested that he would one day lead one of the greatest nonviolent movements in history. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was born on October 2nd, 1869, in Porbandar, a small princely state located on the western coast of present-day Gujarat, India. At that time, India was under the political influence of the British Empire, although many regions were still governed by local rulers. Gandhi's father, Karamchand Gandhi, served as the chief minister, or Diwan, of Porbandar and later held similar positions in neighboring princely states. Although he had little formal education, he was respected for his practical wisdom, honesty, and ability to resolve disputes fairly. His dedication to public service left a lasting impression on young Mohandas, who often observed his father's commitment to justice and responsibility. His mother, Putlabai Gandhi, had an even deeper influence on his character. She was a deeply religious woman whose daily life revolved around prayer, fasting, charity, and compassion. Her faith was not limited to rituals. It was expressed through kindness, patience, humility, and self-control. She regularly observed religious fasts, cared for those. The Gandhi family belonged to the Vaishya, or merchant, caste, but their household reflected a broad respect for different religious traditions. Hinduism formed the center of family life, yet Jain teachings, particularly the principles of nonviolence toward all living beings, self-restraint, and compassion, were also highly influential in Gujarat. These ideas quietly became part of Gandhi's moral foundation long before he consciously developed his philosophy of nonviolent resistance. As a child, Mohandas was shy, reserved, and often uncomfortable in social situations. Unlike many future leaders, he was not known for bold speeches or commanding attention. He preferred listening to speaking and spent much of his time observing the world around him. Teachers considered him an average student. He was diligent, punctual, and respectful, but rarely exceptional in academic performance. His quiet nature sometimes caused. One of the qualities that distinguished young Gandhi was his honesty. A famous story from his school years illustrates this trait. During an examination, a teacher noticed that Gandhi had misspelled a word and quietly signaled him to copy the correct spelling from a nearby student. Gandhi refused. He preferred receiving a lower score rather than succeeding through dishonesty. Like many children, Gandhi was not free from mistakes or youthful. Another significant event in Gandhi's early life was his marriage. At the age of 13, following the customs of the time, he married Kasturba Mukherjee, who was also 13 years old. Child marriage was a common practice in many parts of India during the 19th century. In later years, Gandhi openly reflected on this experience with honesty, acknowledging both the cultural traditions that shaped it and the challenges it created for two children expected to assume adult responsibilities. Over time, Kasturba became not only his wife, but also his trusted companion and partner in many of his social and political campaigns. As Gandhi grew older, he became increasingly interested in education. Although he remained modest in his academic achievements, he developed a strong desire to improve himself. He understood that education was more than acquiring knowledge. It was a path toward personal growth and service to society. This attitude would later motivate him to pursue legal studies in England despite significant cultural and personal challenges. His family's decision to send him abroad was not universally accepted. Some members of the community believed that crossing the sea would expose him to foreign influences and cause him to abandon traditional values. Before leaving for England, Gandhi made a solemn promise to his mother. He vowed to abstain from meat, alcohol, and immoral behavior while living overseas. This promise reflected both his respect for his mother and his growing commitment to self-discipline. Keeping that promise would become one of the earliest demonstrations of the personal integrity that later defined his public life. The years of Gandhi's childhood reveal an important truth. Extraordinary leaders are rarely born extraordinary. They are shaped by countless ordinary experiences, difficult decisions, personal failures, and meaningful relationships. Gandhi's early life was filled with moments that quietly prepared him for the challenges ahead. His mother's spirituality taught compassion. His father's integrity demonstrated public service. His own mistakes taught humility, while his commitment to honesty laid the foundation for a lifetime devoted to truth. These experiences did not immediately transform Gandhi into a great leader. Instead, they planted seeds that would continue to grow throughout his life. Every lesson, every struggle, and every act of reflection contributed to the character of the man who would eventually inspire millions through courage without violence and leadership without hatred. As Gandhi prepared to leave India for England to study law, he entered a new chapter that would challenge his beliefs, broaden his understanding of the world, and begin shaping the philosophy that would eventually change history. Key takeaways. Gandhi's childhood was shaped by honesty, humility, religious values, and strong parental influence. His mother's spirituality, his father's integrity, his early mistakes, and his willingness to learn from them formed the moral foundation of his later philosophy. Rather than being born a great leader, Gandhi developed his character through ordinary experiences that taught him the lifelong importance of truth, compassion, discipline, and self-reflection. In the next chapter, Growing Up in India, Family, Education, and Values, we will explore Gandhi's years as a student, his decision to study law in England, the cultural challenges he faced abroad, and how these experiences broadened his perspective while strengthening his commitment to truth and moral responsibility. Chapter 2. Growing Up in India, Family, Education, and Values. The transition from childhood to adulthood is often the period during which a person's beliefs, ambitions, and identity begin to take shape. For Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, these formative years were marked by curiosity, personal struggle, cultural tradition, and an increasing desire to understand both himself and the world around him. Although he had not yet become a political leader or a social reformer, the experiences of his youth quietly prepared him for the extraordinary role he would later play in history. After completing his early education in Porbandar and later in Rajkot, Gandhi enrolled at Samaldas College in Bhavnagar. Like many young students, he found the transition to higher education challenging. The lectures were delivered in English, a language he had not yet mastered, and he often struggled to follow the lessons. Rather than feeling inspired, he became discouraged and uncertain about his future. Around this time, a family friend suggested that Gandhi should study law in England. Becoming a barrister was considered a respected profession and offered opportunities for public service and financial stability. The idea appealed to Gandhi, but it also presented significant challenges. Traveling overseas was uncommon for many Indians during the late 19th century, and some members of his community believed that crossing the sea would violate religious customs and traditions. The greatest obstacle, however, was not public opinion, but his mother's concern. Putlabai feared that living in a foreign country might expose her son to habits that conflicted with the family's values. She worried he might begin eating meat, drinking alcohol, or abandoning the moral principles with which he had been raised. To reassure her, Gandhi made a solemn promise before leaving India. He vowed that while living abroad, he would abstain from meat, alcohol, and immoral conduct. This promise was not merely a gesture of respect toward his mother. It became an exercise in discipline and integrity. Throughout his years in England, despite social pressure and cultural differences, Gandhi remained faithful to his commitment. Looking back, he often regarded this promise as one of the earliest tests of his character. In September 1888, at the age of 18, Gandhi sailed to London to study law at the Inner Temple, one of the four Inns of Court responsible for training barristers in England. Leaving India was both exciting and intimidating. It was his first experience living far from home, surrounded by unfamiliar customs, traditions, and expectations. Upon arriving in London, Gandhi initially struggled to fit into British society. He believed that becoming a successful lawyer required adopting the appearance and manners of an English gentleman. He purchased fashionable suits, wore gloves and hats, took lessons in dancing, French, and public speaking, and attempted to imitate the lifestyle of those around him. These efforts, however, did not bring the confidence he expected. Instead, they left him feeling uncomfortable and inauthentic. He gradually realized that genuine self-respect does not come from copying others, but from remaining true to one's own identity. This realization marked an important turning point. Gandhi slowly abandoned his attempts to imitate British culture and embraced a simpler, more authentic way of living. His commitment to vegetarianism unexpectedly opened new intellectual doors. Searching for suitable restaurants introduced him to London's Vegetarian Society, where he met people interested in ethics, health, philosophy, and social reform. Through these friendships, Gandhi discovered that vegetarianism could be supported not only by religious tradition, but also by moral reasoning and compassion for all living beings. He soon became an active member of the society, attended meetings, contributed articles to its publications, and gained confidence speaking before groups. These experiences quietly strengthened skills that would later prove essential in his public life. Ironically, the shy young man who once feared speaking in class was gradually learning how to communicate ideas with clarity and conviction. London also exposed Gandhi to a wide range of religious and philosophical traditions. While he remained deeply connected to his Hindu heritage, he became curious about other faiths. He read the Bhagavad Gita in English translation with renewed interest, studied parts of the Bible, especially the Sermon on the Mount, and explored Buddhist and Islamic teachings. Rather than weakening his faith, these studies deepened his appreciation for the universal values shared by many religions: truth, compassion, humility, forgiveness, and service. This openness to different beliefs became one of Gandhi's defining characteristics. He rejected the idea that wisdom belonged to only one religion or culture. Instead, he believed that sincere people of different faiths could learn from one another while remaining faithful to their own traditions. This conviction later enabled him to advocate for religious harmony in a deeply diverse India. While studying law, Gandhi was not considered an exceptional academic scholar, but he was diligent and disciplined. He devoted himself to understanding legal principles and completed his studies successfully. In June 1891, after qualifying as a barrister, he returned to India with hope and ambition, believing that his education would open the door to a successful legal career. Reality, however, proved more difficult than he expected. Despite his legal qualifications, Gandhi struggled to establish himself as a lawyer. His natural shyness made courtroom advocacy extremely challenging. During one of his earliest cases in Bombay, he became so nervous while questioning a witness that he was unable to continue. Embarrassed, he sat down and returned his client's fee. The experience deeply affected his confidence. Many people would have interpreted this failure as proof that they had chosen the wrong profession. Gandhi, however, viewed setbacks differently. Rather than giving up entirely, he continued searching for opportunities while improving himself. He accepted smaller legal assignments, drafted documents, and patiently waited for a chance to gain experience. This period of uncertainty taught Gandhi an invaluable lesson about perseverance. Success rarely follows a straight path. Failure is often not the opposite of success, but an essential part of reaching it. The disappointments he experienced as a young lawyer developed qualities that would later define his leadership: humility, patience, resilience, and the willingness to continue despite discouragement. In 1893, an unexpected opportunity arrived. An Indian merchant named Dada Abdullah offered Gandhi a one-year contract to assist with a legal dispute in South Africa. At first, the assignment seemed like nothing more than temporary employment. Gandhi expected to complete the case and return home. He could not have imagined that this single decision would transform his entire life. South Africa would become the place where Gandhi first experienced systematic racial discrimination on a deeply personal level. It was there that he would begin developing the philosophy of Satyagraha, refine his commitment to nonviolent resistance, and discover the leadership abilities that had remained hidden within him for so many years. Looking back, Gandhi's years of education and early adulthood reveal that personal growth often occurs long before public success becomes visible. His struggles with confidence, his exposure to different cultures, his study of law, and his exploration of religion all contributed to a broader understanding of humanity. These experiences did not simply educate him intellectually. They transformed him morally and spiritually. The young man who returned from England was still searching for his purpose. Yet he had already acquired many of the qualities that would later inspire millions. Intellectual curiosity, personal discipline, respect for diversity, resilience in the face of failure, and a growing belief that character matters more than status. His greatest journey was about to begin, not in a courtroom, but on a railway platform thousands of miles away from home. Key takeaways. Gandhi's years in England shaped his character more than his career. He remained faithful to his values despite cultural pressure, embraced simplicity over imitation, broadened his understanding through the study of different religions, and learned perseverance through professional setbacks. These experiences prepared him for the defining chapter of his life, where adversity in South Africa would transform him from a struggling lawyer into a leader with a global mission. In the next chapter, The Journey to South Africa, we will explore how a single train ride changed Gandhi's life forever and marked the beginning of his lifelong struggle against injustice through truth and nonviolent resistance. Chapter 3. The Journey to South Africa. In every great life, there's a defining moment, a turning point that separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. For Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, that moment did not occur in a courtroom, a political meeting, or a public demonstration. It happened in April 1893. Gandhi accepted a one-year contract from Dada Abdullah and Company, a successful Indian merchant company based in the British colony of Natal, South Africa. The company needed legal assistance in a complex commercial dispute involving business partners. At the time, Gandhi was 23 years old and still struggling to establish himself as a lawyer in India. The assignment seemed like an opportunity to gain valuable experience before returning home to continue his legal career. South Africa was unlike anything Gandhi had known. Although it was part of the British Empire, society was deeply divided along racial lines. White Europeans held political and economic power, while Africans and people of Indian origin faced widespread discrimination. Laws restricted where they could live, work, travel, and even how they were treated in public spaces. Indians, many of whom had arrived as indentured laborers or merchants, were often viewed as inferior citizens regardless of their education or social status. Initially, Gandhi believed that his legal qualifications and British education would earn him equal treatment. After all, he was a trained barrister who dressed professionally, spoke English fluently, and carried valid legal documents. He soon discovered that, in South Africa, racial prejudice outweighed education, character, and only a few days after his arrival, Gandhi experienced the incident that would forever change his life. While traveling by train from Durban to Pretoria for his legal assignment, Gandhi purchased a valid first-class ticket. Dressed in a formal suit, he settled comfortably into his compartment, preparing for the long journey. When the train reached the station at Pietermaritzburg, a white passenger objected to sharing the compartment with an Indian man. He explained that he had paid for many people. Such humiliation would have produced either fear or rage. Gandhi later reflected that both emotions passed through his mind that night. He could have returned to India immediately, convinced that the injustice was too great to overcome. He could have responded with hatred. He realized that what had happened to him was happening every day to thousands of others who had neither education nor legal knowledge to defend themselves. His personal humiliation that night at Petermaritzburg became the beginning of Gandhi's lifelong mission. The train incident was not an isolated event. During his stay in South Africa, Gandhi repeatedly encountered discrimination. On one occasion, he was beaten by a stagecoach driver for refusing to sit outside with the luggage. In hotels, he was denied accommodation because of his race. In court, a judge ordered him to remove his turban These experiences deeply affected him. Yet rather than allowing bitterness to consume him, Gandhi began asking an important question. How can injustice be defeated without becoming unjust ourselves? Instead of returning to India after completing his legal work, Gandhi decided to remain in South Africa to help the Indian community fight discriminatory laws through legal and peaceful means. One of his first major achievements was organizing the Indian community, which had previously been divided by religion, language, region, and economic status. Hindus, Muslims, Christians, merchants, laborers, and professionals often saw themselves as separate groups. In 1894, Gandhi helped establish the Natal Indian Congress, an organization dedicated to defending the civil rights of Indians living in South Africa. Through petitions, public meetings, legal advocacy, and dialogue with government officials, the organization sought peaceful. During these years, Gandhi also began simplifying his personal life. He realized that effective leadership required consistency between one's values and one's actions. He reduced unnecessary possessions, practiced greater self-discipline, and devoted increasing attention to spiritual reflection. These changes were not merely personal preferences. They reflected his growing belief that a leader should embody the principles they ask others to follow. Another important influence during this period was Gandhi's reading. He studied the works of thinkers such as Leo Tolstoy, John Ruskin, and Henry David Thoreau. Tolstoy's writings on nonviolence, Ruskin's ideas about the dignity of labor and social equality, and Thoreau's essay on civil disobedience all contributed to Gandhi's developing philosophy. Rather than gradually, Gandhi began developing the concept that would later become known as Satyagraha, a Sanskrit term often translated as holding firmly to the truth or truth force. Unlike passive resistance, Satyagraha required active courage. It encouraged people to resist injustice without hatred, to disobey unjust laws without violence, and to accept suffering rather than inflict it upon others. This philosophy was revolutionary. Throughout history, political change had often been pursued through war, rebellion, or violence. Gandhi proposed something entirely different. He argued that lasting peace could not be built through hatred because hatred only created more hatred. Many doubted that such an approach could succeed. Critics dismissed nonviolence as weakness or idealism. Gandhi disagreed. He insisted that choosing peace in the face of violence required far greater courage than responding with anger. For him, nonviolence was not the absence of strength, but its highest expression. The years Gandhi spent in South Africa transformed him completely. He had arrived as an inexperienced lawyer seeking professional advancement. He was gradually becoming a leader dedicated to justice, equality, and human dignity. The discrimination he endured could have filled him with resentment. Instead, it strengthened his compassion and clarified his purpose. South Africa became Gandhi's laboratory of leadership. There he learned how to organize movements, inspire ordinary people, negotiate with authorities, communicate across cultural boundaries, and remain faithful to his principles even under pressure. After more than 20 years in South Africa, Gandhi had become an internationally recognized advocate for civil rights and nonviolent resistance. In 1915, he returned to India, not as the shy young lawyer who had left years earlier, but as a seasoned leader whose philosophy was about to ignite one of the greatest independence movements in modern history. Key takeaways. Gandhi's years in South Africa transformed his life and defined his mission. Personal experiences of racial discrimination awakened his commitment to justice and inspired him to remain and serve the Indian community. By organizing the Natal Indian Congress, studying influential thinkers, and developing the philosophy of Satyagraha, Gandhi laid the foundation for nonviolent resistance. These experiences prepared him to lead India's struggle for independence and inspired future civil rights movements around the world. In the next chapter, The Birth of Nonviolent Resistance, Satyagraha, we will explore how Gandhi refined his philosophy of truth and nonviolence, led his first major campaigns of civil disobedience, and demonstrated that moral courage could become one of the most powerful forces for social and political change. Chapter 4. The Birth of Nonviolent Resistance, Satyagraha. When Mohandas Gandhi first arrived in South Africa, he intended to practice law. He left more than 2 decades later, having developed one of the most influential philosophies of social and political change in human history. This philosophy, which he called Satyagraha, became the foundation of his life's work and inspired generations of leaders around the world. It was not created overnight, nor was it the result of a single event. Instead, it emerged through years of reflection, personal sacrifice, and direct experience with injustice. The word Satyagraha comes from 2 Sanskrit words, Satya, meaning truth, and agraha, meaning firmness, insistence, or holding firmly. Gandhi often translated the concept as holding firmly to the truth or truth force. Unlike passive resistance, which may simply involve refusing to cooperate with an authority, Satyagraha demanded active moral. For Gandhi, truth was not merely the opposite of lying. It represented the highest moral reality. Equally important was Gandhi's understanding. Many people misunderstood nonviolence as weakness. Gandhi rejected this idea completely. He argued that violence often comes from fear, anger, or impatience, whereas nonviolence requires extraordinary courage and self-control. It is easy to strike back in anger. It is far more difficult to remain calm, disciplined, and respectful. The first major test of Satyagraha came in 1906. The government of the Transvaal introduced the Asiatic Registration Act, a law requiring Indians to register with authorities, carry identification documents at all times, and submit to fingerprinting. Many members of the Indian community viewed the law as degrading and Gandhi called a mass meeting in Johannesburg where thousands of Indians gathered to discuss their response. Instead of encouraging violence or rebellion, he proposed a different course of action. Participants pledged that they would refuse to obey the unjust law, regardless of the consequences. This moment marked the birth of the first organized Satyagraha campaign. As expected, the government responded harshly. Many protesters, including Gandhi himself, were arrested and imprisoned. Conditions in prison were difficult, but Gandhi viewed imprisonment not as a disgrace, but as a badge of honor. One of the most dramatic moments of the campaign occurred when thousands of registration certificates were publicly burned. This symbolic act demonstrated that participants rejected the legitimacy of the discriminatory law. Importantly, the protest remained peaceful. Gandhi insisted that those participating in Satyagraha follow strict moral standards. They were expected to remain truthful at all times, avoid insulting opponents, respect the law except where conscience required disobedience, and accept the legal consequences of their actions. One of Gandhi's most remarkable beliefs was that the goal of resistance was not to defeat the opponent, but to change the opponent's heart. He often reminded his followers that they should oppose injustice, not hate the people responsible for it. Every individual, he believed, possessed the capacity for moral growth. This principle distinguished Gandhi's movement from many political struggles of the time. Traditional conflicts often sought victory through force, leaving bitterness and resentment long after the fighting ended. Gandhi sought a different kind of victory, one in which both sides could ultimately regain their dignity. Another defining characteristic of Satyagraha was the willingness to accept suffering voluntarily. Gandhi believed that willingly enduring hardship for a just cause demonstrated the sincerity of one's convictions. This idea shocked many observers. Why would someone choose imprisonment rather than violence? Gandhi's answer was simple. Suffering accepted voluntarily could awaken the conscience of society far more effectively than violence ever could. This philosophy did not promise quick results. Gandhi understood that moral change often required patience. Satyagraha was not a shortcut, but a long-term commitment requiring discipline, perseverance, and faith. Participants needed the strength. During the South African campaigns, Gandhi also learned valuable lessons about leadership. He discovered that successful movements depended not only on inspiring speeches, but also on careful organization, clear communication, and personal example. He refused to ask others to make sacrifices that he was unwilling to make himself. Whether enduring imprisonment, living simply, or practicing self-restraint, Gandhi sought to lead through action rather than words alone. His personal lifestyle became increasingly aligned with his philosophy. He simplified his clothing, reduced his material possessions, practiced regular fasting, and devoted more time to prayer and reflection. These choices reflected his belief that leaders should cultivate humility and self-discipline before attempting. The campaigns in South Africa lasted for several years and involved repeated negotiations with government authorities. Progress was slow and often frustrating. Agreements were sometimes broken, requiring renewed acts of peaceful resistance. Yet the movement grabbed. By 1914, important concessions had been won. Although discrimination did not disappear, several of the most unjust laws affecting the Indian community were modified or repealed. More importantly, Gandhi had proven that nonviolent resistance was not merely an idealistic dream, but a practical and effective method of social change. The significance of Satyagraha extended far beyond South Africa. Gandhi had developed a philosophy that would later become the guiding force behind India's struggle for independence. Decades later, leaders such as Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, and many others would adapt its principles to challenge racial segregation, injustice, and oppression in their own countries. Perhaps the greatest lesson of Satyagraha is that real power does not always come from physical strength, political authority, or military. Gandhi often said that the means are just as important as the ends. A just society cannot be built through unjust methods. Lasting peace cannot emerge from endless violence. The road to freedom must reflect the values of the destination itself. As Gandhi prepared to leave South Africa and return to India in 1915, he carried with him more than legal experience or political knowledge. He carried a philosophy that had already transformed thousands of lives and was about to inspire one of the greatest freedom movements in history. Key takeaways. Satyagraha, or truth force, was Gandhi's philosophy of resisting injustice through truth, nonviolence, discipline, and voluntary sacrifice. It rejected hatred and revenge while seeking to transform opponents through moral courage rather than physical force. Developed during Gandhi's years in South Africa, Satyagraha proved that peaceful resistance could become a powerful tool for social and political change, laying the foundation for India's independence movement and inspiring civil rights struggles around the world. In the next chapter, Returning to India, a Nation in Need, we will follow Gandhi's return to his homeland, where he applied the lessons of South Africa to unite millions of Indians in their struggle for justice, dignity, and independence. Chapter 5. Returning to India. When Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi returned to India in January 1915, he was no longer the inexperienced young lawyer who had left the country more than 20 years earlier. He returned as a respected leader whose campaigns in South Africa had demonstrated that disciplined, nonviolent resistance could challenge injustice without resorting to violence. Yet despite his growing international reputation, Gandhi did not assume that he fully understood the condition of his own homeland. Instead of immediately entering politics, he chose first to listen, observe, and learn. India in 1915 was a nation burdened. Gandhi believed that true freedom required more than political independence. A nation could not become genuinely free if its people remained divided by prejudice, injustice, or poverty. Therefore, before seeking to transform the country, He believed following the advice of Gopal Krishna Gokhale, one of India's most respected political leaders and Gandhi's mentor. Gandhi spent months traveling across the country. He visited villages, towns, and cities, speaking with farmers, laborers, merchants, students, teachers, and religious leaders. These journeys profoundly affected him. Although India possessed an ancient civilization rich in culture, philosophy, and spirituality, Gandhi was shocked by the extent of rural poverty. Many villagers lacked clean water, adequate clothing, and sufficient food. Illiteracy was widespread, sanitation was poor, and opportunities for economic advancement were limited. One of the lessons Gandhi had learned in South Africa was that leadership begins with understanding those one hopes to serve. He gradually abandoned Western-style suits and began wearing simple Indian clothing made from khadi, hand-spun cotton cloth. This decision carried both practical and symbolic significance. British factories exported large quantities of manufactured textiles to India, while traditional Indian weavers lost their livelihoods. For Gandhi, clothing became a political statement as well as a moral one. He believed a leader should never appear distant from the people he served. In 1915, Gandhi established the Satyagraha ashram, later known as the Sabarmati ashram, near Ahmedabad. The ashram became much more than a place of residence. Daily life at the ashram reflected Gandhi's philosophy. Everyone participated in household work regardless of education or social status. Residents cleaned, cooked, farmed, and spun cotton together. Gandhi believed that no form of honest work was beneath human dignity. By performing manual labor himself, he sought to challenge social hierarchies and demonstrate that service strengthens rather than diminishes leadership. The ashram also became a training ground for future activists. Those who wished to join Gandhi's campaigns were encouraged to cultivate patience, honesty, humility, and self-control before participating in acts of civil resistance. Gandhi argued that successful nonviolent movements depended upon disciplined individuals capable of responding peacefully even under extreme provocation. The first major opportunity to apply his methods in India came in Champaran, a district in the state of Bihar. Local farmers had long been forced by British plantation owners to devote a significant portion of their land to growing indigo rather than food crops. When local leaders asked Gandhi for assistance, he traveled to Champaran to investigate the situation personally. British officials ordered him to leave the district immediately. Rather than responding with anger or confrontation, he explained that his moral duty required him to remain until he understood the farmers' grievances. He accepted the possibility of arrest without resistance. Thousands of farmers gathered peacefully in support of Gandhi. Their disciplined behavior impressed both observers and government officials. Eventually, authorities withdrew the case against him and appointed a committee to investigate the farmers' complaints. The Champaran campaign marked a turning point. It was Gandhi's first successful application of Satyagraha in India, demonstrating that peace. Soon afterward, Gandhi became involved in another struggle in Ahmedabad, where textile mill workers sought fair wages. Instead of encouraging strikes fueled by hostility, Gandhi emphasized negotiation, mutual respect, and nonviolent discipline. When discussions stalled, he undertook his willingness to suffer alongside the workers inspired both employees and employers to seek a peaceful settlement. The dispute concluded with an agreement that improved wages while avoiding widespread violence. Another important campaign followed in Kedah, where crop failures had left farmers unable to pay taxes. Gandhi argued that demanding full taxation from families facing famine violated basic principles of justice. He encouraged farmers to withhold payment peacefully. The campaign required extraordinary discipline. Participants pledged to remain peaceful, avoid insulting officials, and accept legal consequences if necessary. Eventually, the colonial administration agreed to suspend tax collection for the most severely affected farmers. These early campaigns established Gandhi as a national leader. More importantly, they demonstrated that ordinary people could influence powerful institutions through unity, courage, and moral discipline. Farmers, workers, merchants, women, students, and professionals all discovered that they possessed a voice capable of challenging injustice without abandoning their humanity. Gandhi's leadership differed significantly from traditional political leadership. He rarely appealed to hatred or revenge. Instead, he consistently reminded his followers that their struggle was against injustice, not against individual human beings. Even while opposing British colonial policies, he insisted that respect for human dignity should never be abandoned. This approach sometimes frustrated those who demanded faster or more aggressive action. Some critics argued that nonviolence was too slow. Others believed armed resistance would produce quicker results. Gandhi acknowledged the impatience of many young activists, but remained convinced that violence would ultimately weaken India's moral position and create new cycles of suffering. Another important aspect of Gandhi's leadership was his emphasis on personal responsibility. He encouraged Indians not only to demand political rights, but also to improve themselves through education, sanitation, community service, and ethical living. Freedom, he argued, required both external independence and internal discipline. He also spoke forcefully against untouchability, the practice of excluding certain communities based on caste. Gandhi referred to those who had long been treated as untouchables as Harijans, meaning children of God, reflecting his belief in the equal dignity of every person. Although his approach to caste has been debated by scholars and activists, his public campaigns challenged widespread discrimination and encouraged many Indians to reconsider long-standing social prejudices. By the end of the decade, Gandhi had become one of the most recognized figures in India. His campaigns had proven that peaceful resistance could succeed at the local level, and millions of Indians had begun placing their trust in his leadership. The lessons learned in Champaran, Ahmedabad, and Quetta would soon be applied on a national scale. The First World War had ended, political tensions were rising, and new British policies would ignite widespread anger throughout India. Gandhi understood that the struggle ahead would be far greater than any campaign he had previously led. Yet he also believed that the strength of a movement depends not on the size of its crowds, but on the character of its participants. The principles of truth, nonviolence, discipline, and sacrifice would soon be tested before the eyes of the entire world. Key takeaways. Gandhi's return to India marked the beginning of his transformation into a national leader. By traveling throughout the country, living simply, founding the Sabarmati Ashram, and leading successful campaigns in Champaran, Ahmedabad, and Quetta, he demonstrated that disciplined, nonviolent action could improve the lives of ordinary people. These early victories established public confidence in his leadership and prepared India for the nationwide movement for independence that would soon follow. In the next chapter, Leading the Indian Independence Movement, we will examine how Gandhi united millions of Indians through the non-cooperation movement, challenged British authority on an unprecedented scale, and became the central figure in India's long struggle for freedom. Chapter 6. Leading the Indian Independence Movement. By the end of the second decade of the 20th century, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi had become one of the most influential public figures in India. His successful campaigns in Champaran, Ahmedabad, and Quetta had demonstrated that nonviolent resistance could produce real change. Yet these were local struggles. The challenge that lay ahead was far greater, inspiring an entire nation to seek freedom through peaceful means. India's demand for self-rule had existed long before Gandhi returned from South Africa. Many leaders had devoted years to advocating constitution. To Gandhi, independence was not merely the transfer of political power from one government to another. It was a moral awakening. A nation could not become truly free unless its citizens developed self-discipline, unity. The political atmosphere changed dramatically after the First World War. Many Indians had supported the British war effort, believing that their loyalty would be rewarded with meaningful political reforms. Instead, the British government introduced the Rowlatt Act in 1919, granting authorities broad powers to arrest individuals without trial and restrict civil liberties. For many Indians, the law represented a profound betrayal. Gandhi called for a nationwide hartal, or peaceful general strike, urging citizens to suspend business, pray, fast, and protest peacefully. Although Gandhi repeatedly emphasized nonviolence, unrest broke out in some areas. Thousands of unarmed men, women, and children had gathered in a public garden during a religious festival and political meeting. The massacre shocked India and drew international condemnation. For Gandhi, the tragedy confirmed that the relationship between the British government and the Indian people had reached a moral crisis. Yet, even in the face of such violence, he refused to abandon. Instead, Gandhi proposed a bold new strategy, the non-cooperation movement. Launched in 1920, the movement encouraged Indians to withdraw their cooperation from British institutions. Gandhi argued that colonial rule depended not only on military strength, but also on the participation of those being governed. If millions of Indians peacefully refused to cooperate, the system itself would weaken. The movement asked citizens to take several forms of peaceful action. Students were encouraged to leave government schools and enroll in Indian educational institutions. Lawyers were urged to suspend their legal practice in British courts. Civil servants were asked to reconsider serving colonial authorities. Citizens were encouraged to boycott foreign-made goods and support Indian industries instead. One of the most visible symbols of the movement was the promotion of khadi, hand-spun cotton cloth. Every day, Gandhi devoted time to spinning cotton on a traditional spinning wheel known as the charkha. To many observers, this appeared to be a simple domestic activity. Gandhi, however, transformed it into a powerful political symbol. British textile factories relied heavily on Indian markets, while many Indian weavers had lost their livelihoods due to imported manufacture. The spinning wheel soon became a national symbol of dignity, independence, and economic empowerment. Another remarkable feature of the non-cooperation movement was its inclusiveness. For perhaps the first time in modern Indian history, millions of people from different religions, regions, languages, and social backgrounds participated in a common national movement. Students, teachers, merchants, farmers, laborers, and religious leaders joined together with a shared belief that India deserved self-government. Gandhi consistently reminded participants that discipline was essential. Nonviolence required more than avoiding physical attacks. It demanded respect, patience, honesty, and self-control even under severe provocation. Despite these instructions, maintaining perfect discipline among millions of participants proved extremely difficult. In February 1922, a violent incident occurred in the town of Chayuri Chowra. After clashes with police, an angry crowd attacked and burned a police station, resulting in the deaths of several officers. Gandhi was deeply saddened. Although the violence had not been planned by movement leaders, he believed it demonstrated. To the surprise of many supporters, Gandhi made a controversial decision. He suspended the entire non-cooperation movement. Many political colleagues strongly disagreed. Some believed the movement had reached unprecedented momentum and that stopping it would delay India's struggle for independence. Others argued that isolated violence should not determine the fate of a nationwide campaign involving millions of peaceful participants. Gandhi accepted these criticisms but remained firm. For him, the moral integrity of the movement was more important than immediate political success. He believed that freedom achieved through violence would betray the very principles upon which a just society should be built. This decision revealed one of Gandhi's defining qualities as a leader, his willingness to sacrifice short-term political advantage in order to remain faithful to his ethical convictions. Soon afterward, British authorities arrested Gandhi on charges of sedition. During his trial in 1922, Gandhi did not attempt to deny his actions. Instead, he openly accepted responsibility for encouraging peaceful resistance against colonial rule. He explained that when laws become unjust, citizens may have a moral duty to challenge them peacefully while accepting the legal consequences. The judge sentenced him to 6 years in prison, although he was released after approximately 2 years because of health concerns. Imprisonment did not weaken Gandhi's influence. On the contrary, his willingness to accept punishment peacefully strengthened public admiration for his leadership. Many Indians viewed his imprisonment as evidence that he genuinely practiced the principles he preached. While in prison and after his release, Gandhi devoted significant attention to what he called constructive work. He encouraged literacy, village development, sanitation, communal harmony, women's participation, and the elimination of untouchability. He believed that preparing India for independence required building strong communities, not simply opposing British authority. These efforts reflected Gandhi's broader understanding of leadership. A leader, he believed, should not merely criticize injustice, but also help create better alternatives. Political freedom without education, social equality, public health, and economic opportunity would remain incomplete. Although the non-cooperation movement ended earlier than many had hoped, its impact was profound. It transformed the Indian independence movement from the concern of political elites into a truly national struggle. Millions of ordinary citizens discovered that they possessed both the right and the responsibility to participate in shaping their country's future. Equally important, the movement introduced the world to a new model of political leadership, one based not on fear or military power, but on moral authority, personal sacrifice, and public trust. Gandhi had shown that an empire could be challenged without raising an army. The next stage of the struggle would demonstrate this lesson even more dramatically. In 1930, a simple march to the sea would become one of the most famous acts of civil disobedience in modern history, inspiring people far beyond the borders of India. Key takeaways. The non-cooperation movement marked the first nationwide campaign led by Gandhi against British colonial rule. By encouraging peaceful boycotts, promoting economic self-reliance through khadi, and insisting on strict nonviolent discipline, Gandhi united millions of Indians in a common struggle for freedom. Although he suspended the movement after violence erupted at Chauri Chaura, his decision reinforced his belief that ethical principles must never be sacrificed for political success. His leadership transformed India's independence movement into a mass movement grounded in truth, self-discipline, and moral courage. In the next chapter, The Salt March, A Peaceful Revolution, we will explore how Gandhi's 1930 march to the Arabian Sea became one of the most influential acts of nonviolent resistance in world history and accelerated India's path toward independence. Chapter 7. The Salt March, A Peaceful Revolution. At the heart of the campaign was an issue so simple that many initially underestimated its significance: salt. Salt was essential to every household, regardless of wealth, religion, or social class. Every family needed it for cooking and preserving food. Yet under British colonial rule, Indians were prohibited from producing their own salt. Instead, they were required to purchase heavily taxed salt controlled by the colonial government. To Gandhi carefully selected salt because everyone could understand its importance. A campaign focused on constitutional debates or complex legal reforms might inspire education. On March 12, 1930, Gandhi left the Sabarmati ashram accompanied by 78 carefully chosen volunteers. Before beginning the journey, he reminded them that the success of the movement depended entirely upon discipline and nonviolence. The destination was the coastal village of Dandi, approximately 240 miles, 390 kilometers away. For 24 days, Gandhi and his companions walked through villages across Gujarat. Every stop became an opportunity to speak with local communities about freedom, justice, self-reliance, and nonviolent resistance. Crowds grew larger with each passing day. Observers were struck by Gandhi's simplicity. He walked wearing his plain hand-spun khadi cloth, carrying a walking stick, and living as he always encouraged others to live. His appearance reinforced an important message. Leadership is measured by character, not by wealth or status. Finally, on April 6, 1930, Gandhi reached the shore at Dandi. Early that morning, he bent down, picked up a small lump of natural salt left by the sea, and held it in his hand. With that simple act, he deliberately violated the British salt law. No violence occurred. No weapons were used. Yet the symbolic power of that moment echoed across India and around the world. Inspired by Gandhi's example, millions of Indians began producing salt themselves. Others organized peaceful demonstrations, boycotted foreign goods, and refused to cooperate with colonial authorities. Women participated in unprecedented numbers, leading local protests, making salt, organizing meetings, and accepting imprisonment alongside men. The independence movement became more inclusive than ever before. The British government responded with mass arrests. Tens of thousands of protesters were imprisoned, including Gandhi himself. Officials hoped that removing movement leaders would weaken public resistance. One of the most powerful episodes occurred at the Darasan Salt Works, where groups of peaceful volunteers attempted to occupy a government-controlled salt. As they approached, police struck them with heavy clubs. Many fell to the ground with serious injuries. Yet the protesters neither fought back nor fled. Others quietly stepped forward to take their place. Journalists who witnessed the event described the extraordinary discipline of the demonstrators. Their reports reached readers around the world, generating widespread sympathy for the Indian cause and raising difficult questions about the moral legitimacy of British rule. The Salt March achieved far more than its immediate objective. Although the British government did not immediately abolish the salt tax or grant independence, the campaign transformed international opinion. It demonstrated that disciplined civil disobedience could challenge even one of the world's most powerful empires without resorting to violence. Gandhi had shown that moral authority could become a force stronger than fear. The campaign also strengthened India's national identity. People from different religions, languages, castes, and regions increasingly viewed themselves as participants in a common struggle. The movement reminded millions that freedom required unity, patience, and personal responsibility. In 1931, Gandhi met with British leaders during the Round Table Conference in London. Although these negotiations did not produce, the years that followed brought continued challenges. The independence movement experienced setbacks, disagreements, and periods of imprisonment. Gandhi himself repeatedly urged both Indians and British officials to pursue reconciliation rather than revenge. Even when political tensions intensified, he remained committed to dialogue and peaceful resistance. Eventually, after decades of struggle involving countless individuals and organizations, India achieved independence on August 15, 1947. Gandhi's philosophy had played a central role in mobilizing millions through nonviolent action. Yet independence was accompanied by the painful partition of British India into India and Pakistan, leading to widespread communal violence and mass displacement. These tragic events deeply saddened Gandhi. Throughout his life, he had worked to promote harmony among religious communities. During the violence surrounding partition, he traveled to troubled areas, fasted, prayed, and appealed for peace, urging people to protect one another regardless of faith. On January 30th, 1948, while walking to an evening prayer meeting in New Delhi, Gandhi was assassinated by a Hindu extremist who opposed some of his efforts toward reconciliation. His death shocked the world. India's first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, addressed the nation with words that remain unforgettable. "The light has gone out of our lives." Yet the light had not truly disappeared. Gandhi's ideas continued to inspire generations of leaders, including Martin Luther King Jr. in the United States, Nelson Mandela in South Africa, Cesar Chavez in the United States, and countless activists working for justice, equality, and human rights across the globe. His legacy reminds us that history is not shaped only by armies, governments, or powerful institutions. It is also shaped by individuals willing to act with integrity, compassion, and unwavering commitment to truth. The Salt March remains one of history's greatest examples of how peaceful action, grounded in moral courage, can awaken the conscience of a nation and inspire the world. Conclusion. The enduring legacy of Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi's life demonstrates that true greatness is measured not by wealth, military victories, or political power, but by the ability to inspire others through integrity, courage, and compassion. From a shy young lawyer who struggled to speak in public to one of the most influential leaders in modern history, his journey reminds us that extraordinary leadership begins with ordinary acts of honesty, discipline, and self-reflection. Throughout this book, we have followed Gandhi's remarkable transformation. From his childhood in Porbandar to his education in England, his awakening in South Africa, the birth of Satyagraha, his return to India, and his leadership of one of the world's greatest nonviolent movements. At every stage, he remained guided by principles rather than personal ambition. Gandhi believed that lasting change begins within the individual. He taught that truth is not merely something to speak, but something to live. He argued that courage is demonstrated not by harming others, but by standing firmly for justice without surrendering to hatred. His philosophy challenged the idea that violence is the only path to victory, proving instead that moral conviction can become a force capable of changing nations. His life was not free from criticism or controversy, and historians continue to debate aspects of his ideas and decisions. A balanced understanding of Gandhi recognizes both his extraordinary achievements and the complexities of his legacy. Yet even those who disagree with some of his views often acknowledge the profound influence his philosophy has had on movements for civil rights, democracy, and peaceful social change. Today, Gandhi's message remains remarkably relevant. In a world facing conflict, inequality, polarization, and injustice, his commitment to dialogue, empathy, and nonviolent action offers enduring lessons. While the challenges of the 21st century differ from those of colonial India, the values of honesty, humility, respect, and compassion remain timeless. Perhaps Gandhi's greatest contribution was reminding humanity that each person has the power to make a difference. We may not lead national movements or change the course of history on the same scale, but we shape our communities through the choices we make every day. Every act of kindness, every commitment to truth, every refusal to answer hatred with hatred carries forward the spirit of the principles Gandhi championed. His famous invitation to be the change you wish to see in the world continues to inspire people across cultures and generations. Whether applied to leadership, education, family life, public service, or personal growth, this simple idea reminds us that meaningful transformation begins with ourselves. The story of Mahatma Gandhi is ultimately more than the biography of one remarkable individual. It is a testament to the enduring power of conscience, the strength of peaceful resistance, and the belief that justice can be pursued without abandoning humanity. His life remains a timeless reminder that one person's unwavering commitment to truth can illuminate the path for millions.